Good to see all of you.
Good afternoon, Rabbi.
Good afternoon. Okay, we're going to be learning the book of Shmuel, or book of Samuel, and we're in the middle of chapter 21. And what we've been learning over here in the book of Shmuel Aleph is that Shaul has been very jealous and nervous of David HaMelech. And the reason, of course, is because he feels his kingdom is slowly coming to an end, and David is going to be taking over. And Shaul is trying to hold on to whatever ending he's going to have. And he even is hoping that his son will take him over. And Shaul initially had tried to get rid of David in a way that no one would realize what he's doing. He would throw his spear into the wall, and by mistake, it would look like it was mistakenly hit David. And we know that Shaul had this ruach ra, he had a bad spirit, some type of a melancholy, depression, bipolar, some issue, definitely an issue. And what we want to believe is that maybe it was totally beyond his control, because surprisingly, the way the rabbis understand Shaul was that he is very righteous. Even after he does some terrible things, he still is considered some level of righteousness to him, that he, after he dies, he's even accepted into the location where the prophet Shmuel goes. King Saul somehow is allowed there. He gets a certain portion in the world to come that's very special. So we have to assume that there is something going on that's Hashem does not consider Shaul in his own mind, like he's not aware of what he's doing. It's sort of like he's upset. He has been taken over by some other some other power has taken him over. So however you understand it, it doesn't really minimize the challenge that King David is going through. His life is in jeopardy, and King Saul is trying to kill David, his own son-in-law, and he's very jealous of his success, and he's very upset that his son seems to side with David. And in truth, his son is helping David. He helped David escape. Michal, his daughter, Saul's daughter, who's married to David, to King David, to David. She also helps David escape. And at one point, Shaul makes it very clear to his cabinet that he wants to kill David, and he wants to get his cabinet on board, and he wants them to help him out. He doesn't seem to be successful at killing David, and he tells them together that we need to get rid of David, and this is in chapter 19. Saul spoke to Jonathan, his son, and to all his servants about killing David, and so this is what's in Shaul's intent. This is part of Shaul's desire. And even at one point, he even promises his son that he's not going to kill him, because his son tries to speak logically to Shaul and tell him, this doesn't make sense. What do you have against David? What did he do wrong to you? And Shaul even makes a promise to his son. But then all of a sudden afterwards, at some point later, it all seems to mean nothing. It was meaningless. Yonason's dialogue and discussion with his father doesn't seem to hold. The promise didn't seem to take effect. Either Shaul is taken over by this other power and the promise means nothing, or maybe he actually got the vow annulled. That's possible. He maybe had the vow annulled. But in any event, Shaul is definitely after his son-in-law, to kill him after David. Yes, David.
I'm just wondering if this evil spirit that took over Shaul, is this a physical, is it a psychological, or is it a spiritual?
Your guess is as good as mine. I wouldn't know what that means, even a spirit taking someone over. I'm not familiar with that field.
Oh, I thought maybe like some type of negative spirit was sent by Hashem or the forces of evil in order to have an influence on him.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to translate it. I didn't see much commentary on it. Maybe if anyone sees anything in their research, if anyone wants to write something on this would be an interesting. I'd love to see if there's much, if anyone can find any commentary on this. What we do know is that Shaul's excuse for killing David is that he believes in his mind that David wants to rebel against him and take over and become king. He somehow sees this, everything that David does, and he's listening to a lot of gossip as well. Shaul is the one most interested in hearing gossip about David, and he believes in this conspiracy theory that David's out to get him. In the meantime, he's the one trying to kill David, but in his mind, he's got this conspiracy all built up that David for sure wants to kill him. There's no question in his mind. And according to Jewish law, he is allowed to go and kill David. So we have this, in a certain sense, he's got a permit there to go and kill David, because there is a permit for a king to kill to subdue and end a rebellion with killing anyone who's rebelling against him. And so Hashem is going to allow Shaul to try many times to kill David. And at the same time, God is saving David every single time. As we saw with the spear being thrown at David, all of a sudden David moves back and the spear just misses him by the skin of his teeth. And so David is being saved by Hashem continuously, but at the same time, Shaul is not stopping to try. He's continuously trying. He's getting others to try. And at some point, it changes from not only is it Shaul himself trying to kill David, it soon becomes his whole cabinet he tries to get them on board. And then the entire Jewish people see it as if Shaul, needs to kill David, and David is the rebellion to the Jewish king. And so David is looked at least it seems he's looked at possibly by the community as someone who's against the king. And so this is the surprising element to it, that on the one hand, David is this most righteous, pure soul. He's so holy, and yet the entire people can't see that. They don't know that. And they start thinking, look, if he's after David, if he's after the king, the Shaul, he's rebelling. He's turned to evil, and the king wants to kill him. We have to give him over. And David is worried for his life, because wherever he goes, they might take him and give him over to King Saul, Shaul HaMelech, his own father-in-law. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say maybe we have a case here like with Noah. Compared to some of the other kings, he might be a righteous man.
You're talking about
he's only going after David. The others probably killed a lot more people than just one. So it depends what we're comparing him to.
Right, right. Well, there is a Talmudic statement that mentions something along the lines of the mind, the feeling that a king has. This is in Tractate Shabbos. It mentions there. I really should even read it. Let me see if I have.
Because David was very successful in anything he tried to do, anything he was asked to do, anything that he thought he was asked to do, he would do more. So Shaul sees the competition. So it's really a case of comparison, to other kings.
Yeah, it's correct what you're saying, but at the same time, you have to understand that David is on the same team and he's not trying to compete. And even though he was anointed by Shmuel Hanavi, but no one knew about that.
Maybe Shaul doesn't know that.
Right, Shaul doesn't, and David is not revealing that. He's keeping it quiet. Right. He's fine. He's in no rush to take over.
Yeah.
Yes, Moshe. Yes, Moshe.
Maybe he's a Lamed Bavnik, David HaMelech. In other words, he was in that category of tzaddikim, or something. He was on he was so.
He definitely.
That he was on such a level of tahara that they were trying to there was forces trying to kill him, and Hashem was trying to stop it at that point. But
he definitely was a tzaddik. It does mention that he killed his evil inclination through fasting, so he definitely was a tzaddik. And v'libi cholol bekirbi, it says his heart was empty inside him, meaning he didn't have the inclination. That at some point in his life he reached that level of destroying even his evil inclination. So he definitely reached the level of a tzaddik.
So that gives him a shkina also, like a glow over him that Shaul probably felt threatened by, because he already saw his own situation deteriorating, and he felt that had to be eliminated because it would override his rulership when he was ruling over his his kahal,
Right. It just doesn't sit so well with me that someone would be a tzaddik and he shines from holiness, and the king who is allowed to kill someone who's rebelling, that would fall into the category of
Shmuel.
Would that fall into the category of rebelling because he has such a holy shine to him? I mean, that doesn't sit right with me that would be a good reason to kill him because he's a tzaddik and he has a shine. I don't know. To me, it just sounds a little. Yeah.
Rabbi, the other part of this is that Shmuel, he was very close with Shaul, and why wouldn't he have told him? Well, he's been anointed the next king. I mean, why would he allow him to go after him when he had such a close relationship with Shmuel?
I want to know that.
Yeah. It just seems to me that
he said why he didn't. He said why he didn't do it. He was afraid of Shaul. He knew what Shaul intentions.
But he held him in high esteem. I believe that Shaul did hold Shmuel in high esteem. That he was his advisor.
Not if he knew
very
that
close
he anointed David.
So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it's very hard to understand this story, and the only thing that that I could add to the equation is this Talmudic statement where it mentions that the feeling that a king has is something that we can't relate to. In other words, it like affects their mind, their brain, the way they think, the way they do things. And somehow, you know, this is it's beyond our understanding. It's beyond our ability to relate to. And it's only Hashem can really judge, you know, what the story is. It's almost like it's beyond the ability to really. It's not human anymore. Sort of like
they have absolute power, or almost absolute power is the problem.
Yeah, well, this is the issue, and it affects their brain. It affects their mind.
Yeah.
Yes, Susan.
Yeah.
Susan?
What's the difference in age between David and King Saul?
Maybe 20 years.
Not very much. In other words,
You know, I'd have to look it up exactly, but
King Saul is the age, his son is the age of David, probably.
I'd have to look it up and see.
so it's not
you
a
know.
question of losing. King Saul is afraid that David's going to take over too soon.
Well, he doesn't know. He has this feeling, but he doesn't have anything clear. There's nowhere that he sees written that David is taking over. All he knows is he's reading the wall, the writing on the wall, and he thinks he's getting nervous.
So
he's getting
paranoid.
afraid. He's paranoid. He's
Yeah.
paranoid. Now, and he's actually right. He's right.
But he is.
does
So he
know-
has a reason to be paranoid.
No, he has no reason, but he ends up being correctly paranoid. But he has no excuse to be paranoid. Now, the reason he shouldn't be paranoid is because it doesn't matter who's taking over. He's losing. He's going to lose. So
He's out.
he's out. The prophet told him, you've sinned, you're going to lose the kingdom. So the fact is, he's a loser. He's on his way out. And there are different ways of leaving. Some people leave in dignity, and some people leave with anger. You know, some people leave, they make sure to destroy as much as they can before they leave. And some people try to do as good things as they, as much good as they can before they leave.
Right.
But my point is that it's not that he's trying to destroy before he leaves. He doesn't mean to destroy and ruin things before he leaves. He's trying to do what's best, but unfortunately, he's not in his own mind.
Yeah.
And he's not able to. But he really means well, and that's what I'm getting at. That you shouldn't think that as bad as things are, it's not that he's so evil. I'm trying to take that thought out, which it seems like he's really evil, and he's not. And we're trying to figure out why.
Well, they wouldn't say he was still righteous after he passed. If he wasn't, he must, if he really is righteous, then we have to believe that.
That's correct. He definitely has some righteousness there that
I kind of feel sorry for him.
Understanding. So we're gonna continue. So we are in chapter 20.
Not 21.
Let me just make sure. You're right. You are correct, actually, Ben. We're in chapter 21. Chapter 20 ended with Yonasan and David concluding their meeting. And Yonasan wishes well to David. They make a treaty, but at the same time, Yonasan does forget one thing. He forgets to give him Seida Laderech, some food for the way. When you're helping someone escape, one of the things you got to give them is some food for the journey. So David is starving. He's starving to death. And that's where chapter 21 begins. And we got through a little over half of this chapter. And what we reached was a point where Shaul, I'm sorry, where David escapes, and where does he run? He runs to Noiv. Noiv is the city where the Kayanim are. Yes, David.
Yeah, I just looked at Rabbi Google
Ah,
to see the age difference. So it
yes.
says it's unclear, but it says that David was 30 years old
When he started his reign.
Yeah, right. And then it says that Jonas and Jonathan was the oldest son. And that means that Jonathan might have been 42 at his death, but he might have been older. If Saul was 18 at the birth of Jonathan, that he would have been at least 60 at his death. That means that there's at least the 30-year gap between David and Saul, and at least a 12-year gap between David and Jonathan.
Okay, so I'm not too far off. I guess 20. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's the story for whoever asked about the gap in age. Yes. Okay. So we are here in the story of David running to Noiv, and he runs to the city of Noiv where the Kohanim are, where the tabernacle is, and David is starving. And I mentioned there's Talmudic discussion as to what day exactly he arrived. He either arrived on a Friday or on a Shabbos. And if he arrived on Shabbos, it was a little surprising, of course, for him to arrive on a Shabbos because, he traveled, walking outside of the Tuchum, which is a certain measurement of space. You don't normally travel. You're not allowed to travel on Shabbos, but this was a matter of life and death. He needed food. He came to the Mishkan. We spoke last week about the fact that the only food there was some type of holy bread. Different opinions. It was the common understanding is that it was the showbread, the lachem hapanim, the bread that was on the table, the gold covered table. According to other opinion, it was possibly bread from one of the sacrifices. But the point is that in that town, they were basically Kohanes, and the Kohanes eat truma. They eat holy bread. All generally that's what they rely on, and therefore, in other words, they're not eating regular bread. And the problem is, he's an Israelite. David is from the tribe of Judah. He's not a Kohen. Therefore, no matter what they give him, is not going to be proper. What they want to do is at least minimize the sin. In other words, he's eligible to eat whatever he needs for life and death, but they're trying to, at least give him something that wouldn't be as serious of a sin. So they're giving him the showbread, and that's really better than giving him the truma, the tithing that would also not be allowed to be eaten by a regular Israelite. And the other thing that David needs is a sword. Again, he's going to start he's running away. He didn't have food with him, but he also needs to have a sword if he's going to be able to survive. So these are the two things he needs to survive. So he has the bread. They gave him the bread, and now he needs a sword. And there's this idea mentioned in the verse 10 that the sword was wrapped up in a cloth behind the ephod. The ephod is the apron that the Kohen Gadol wore. And the apron was attached to the breastplate. And the breastplate that the Kohen Gadol wore was what was used to ask from God anything that they needed with regard to the communal affairs. So a king had an issue, he would ask when it came to matters of major importance, the king would be allowed, they would ask the Urim Betumim, which is that breastplate, which is connected to this ephod. So when he says it's behind the ephod, one of the meanings behind this is that he had asked the breastplate a matter for David. And he either asked him if he's going to be successful at running away, at his, is he gonna live? Is it going to be a failure, his escape? And another option that we heard last week, I think David shared it with us, that there is a insight that the question that the Kohen Gadol had asked from God was if he's allowed to even give him the sword. So in other words, David needs a sword, and there is a sword there in the tabernacle. There's one sword, and that is actually a sword that David himself had brought there after he killed Goliath, which Goliath, when he won his fight against Goliath, his slingshot, he threw a stone with his slingshot into Goliath's forehead, and it killed Goliath. And he then went and chopped off Goliath's head, and he took that sword and he brought it to the tabernacle so that everyone could see this great miracle that had happened with this sword. So that sword is in the tabernacle, and the question is are they allowed to give it to David? According to this view, is that the Kohen Gadol would ask the Urim V'Tumim, he asked God, and the answer he was given was through that breastplate. In other words, letters on the breastplate would shine up, and it would tell the Kohen Gadol what the answer is. And the answer was obviously that he was allowed to give the sword to David. So he gives him a sword, and he basically asked the question for David from God, and he gave him a sword. And David then went, and we're in verse 11. Again, we're in Shmuel Aleph, Samuel 1, verse 11. And David arose and fled from Saul on that day, and he came to Achish. He came to Achish, the king of Gath. And so what we see here is that David is so nervous to go anywhere that he's choosing to go to the enemy. And he's going to go to the enemy, and he figured that maybe he could somehow in the enemy territory find some type of refuge. He felt that wherever he would go in the Jewish community was dangerous, because, wherever he goes, the king is after him to get him. And if anyone helps hide him, maybe they'll be considered like accessories to the, they'll be considered to additional helpers to the outlaw, to the criminal. And basically they will, so he basically ran to the enemy. So the only problem is he's got a big problem, and that is he's holding the sword of Goliath. And who is Goliath? Goliath. He's the brother of the king of Gath. So there's the king of Gath, his name is Achish. Another term that they use for the kings of the Plishtim kings was Avimelech. It's like a common term. They would just call them Avimelech. So there's two names here. Avimelech and Achish are the two names for the king. Now, don't get confused. The Kohen Gadol's name was Achimelech. So don't get confused with Avimelech and Achimelech. So the Kohen Gadol's name is Achimelech. Now, so David is now going to, trying to escape. So he goes to this Achish, the king of Gath, and the servants of Achish, they say to him, I think we caught David. They tell the king, look at it. Look at this. We caught David. And let's kill him. This is our enemy. And you have to understand that David had killed thousands of plishtim. And here, I don't know if you remember, but there was the saying that people were saying was that Shaul killed thousands and David killed 10,000s, right? So we've got, here he is. He came right into the enemy territory. The servants, say, listen, we've got the famous David in our hands. Let's enjoy killing him. And so the servants of Achish, they tell Achish, is this not David, the king of the land? Is it not of him that they sing with the timbrels, saying Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? So this is what David is now faced with, being killed by, it was one thing to be in the Jewish territory. Now he's in the Goyish territory and he's facing the same situation of his life is endangered. And David took this matter to heart and was greatly afraid of Achish, the king of Gas. And so he changed his demeanor in their eyes, and he feigned madness while in their presence. He scribbled on the doors of the gateway and let his saliva drip into his beard. Now, there is a psalm in the book of Tehillim, the Psalm number 34. Psalm number 34 in the book of Psalms, it says, by David, when he feigned insanity before Avimelech. Who's Avimelech? Achish. This is the Avimelech we're talking about, when David acted as if he went crazy, who then drove him away and he left. So this is the psalm. I bless the Lord at all times. His praise is always in my mouth. My soul glories in the Lord. Let the humble hear it and rejoice. Exalt the Lord with me and let us extol his name together. I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. This is referring to this story here. And in the introduction to this psalm, in this at least in this book, it mentions that this psalm tells us of when David was in grave danger in the palace of Achish, the brother of Goliath. David acted like a madman, and he would let spittle run down his beard. And he wrote on the doors, Achish, the king of Gas, owes me 100,000 gold coins. And this led Achish to eject him from the palace. And David composed this psalm in his joy. And it's interesting, it's written in the alphabetical order. So each verse starts with the Aleph and then the Beis and the Gimel. And it's a beautiful psalm. We recite it on the Shabbos, in the beginning of the Shabbos morning prayers. So the psalm is Psalm number 34. And what really King David is doing by authoring this psalm is, you have to understand, on the one hand, David pretended to be a madman, and that's what saved him. So did God save him, or did his acting like a madman save him? And David therefore wrote a psalm so that we won't get confused. Acting like a madman is only a receptacle for God's blessing, for God's salvation. He acted like a madman, but that would have meant nothing if God didn't want it to work. So he did what he could to save himself. And what he gained by acting like a madman was one of two things. Either they said, this cannot be David. David is a brilliant warrior, and this is a nut. He might look a little, maybe he looks a little similar to David, but it can't be him. I mean, how could this be him? It must be, it must have a similar look. I remember I was once giving a tour to a group of people in Crown Heights, and one of the people, it's interesting, he told me, and I saw it right in him, his face looked exactly like Bibi Netanyahu. He said, a lot of people confuse me with Bibi Netanyahu. And
Rabbi?
amazing to see. But, so they said, he looks like David, but he's not, this can't be him. And that's one option. The other option is that even if it was David, maybe David became a madman, and they figured, we don't need to kill mad people, and which actually adds an interesting insight into this, because there aren't countries that they look at people who are deranged and they just murder them because they figure, what are they adding to society? Let me sorry, everyone here. Okay, let's see if that works. There are countries where they kill deranged people, anyone that's not adding anything to society. And here, what we see, even in the evil Kalishtim, these are evil people, but they wouldn't go and kill someone who is deranged. They said, just get him out of here. I don't want anything to do with him. They could have easily just cut off his head, but they didn't. And which is interesting, interesting thought. If so in any event, the idea here is that David used this ability of his to pretend to be mad. It worked.
Rabbi?
And it worked, of course, because God wanted it to work. But I do want to mention one thing before I take your points and questions, that there is a medrash that says that David once had asked Hashem, he said, everything that you created in the world is beautiful, and the most beautiful of all things is wisdom. But why did you create madness? What is its purpose? And what benefit do you have from madness? People who rip their clothing on purpose and just do crazy things, people laugh at them. And Hashem answered, David, one day you will need madness. What you criticize, you will need at some point. And you will even pray that I give you the gift of madness. And this is where the story concludes, where David is given that gift of madness. He's able to present it very well, and it works. Now, we also have to take into consideration the fact that Achish, the king of Gas, he had a wife and 2 children who were deranged. And this made him feel like, I don't need any more deranged people. I had enough. Every time I walk into my house, every time I see my family, I'm stuck with this. So it also helped the fact that God made his family members deranged. It helped him just want to get rid of David and get him far away as possible. Just drive him many miles away, and let's leave him there and drop him off. And that's really where this story brings us. So again, now you have an understanding of chapter 34 in Psalms, and we have a little understanding of what of what's happening here with David trying to find refuge in this foreign land, and he mistakenly goes there, and he's even got the sword of the brother of the king, and that's the sword of Goliath, and miraculously Hashem saves him. Yes, Moshe.
No, I was going to say that I heard that in Rome also that, you know, if somebody was crazy, they were considered accepted, you know, because if they're Majnun, you know, they were used, they joined their ranks of people that were crazy, you know. So what I'm thinking is that perhaps, you know, this was something that was acceptable, you know, to the king, you know, that he figured that maybe if he's crazy, maybe we can accept him now to our ranks, and we could use him for the purpose of attacking the Jews. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you know, it reciprocally that would end up being the case. You know, they figure if
That
somebody
works.
goes crazy.
Yeah, that works maybe if someone's like crazy that he'll take risks. But here you got some guy who's just drooling, and I don't know how much he could help the. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if that was one of the intent. Doesn't seem like that because he ends up going back.
But he still
And,
was he still was a warrior, you know, in the sense that that would have been
Right.
worthwhile to utilize him for that purpose.
Right.
Rabbi,
Yes. Yes.
a couple things. The first thing is that it occurs to me that having the intimate association with his wife and his two children may have somewhere within him, within Achish, rung a bell of possibly even compassion, so that he wouldn't want to go so far as to kill someone who was similarly afflicted. That's one point.
Good
The other
point,
point
yes.
is, I read a medrash once. I think it was in a religious, you know, one of the comic series, that I don't know if this actually happened, but when David was being pursued by Shaul HaMelech, he, of course, we know he took refuge in a cave, although I didn't see it in the story in the Nach, but it was in the Medrash. And at one point, he had asked Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what was the purpose of a spider? And at that point, when he was in the cave, a spider made a web in front of the.
We're going to get to that.
Cave.
Yeah. We're going to get to that. I don't want to, you know, that's a little later.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do want to mention.
I didn't realize I was jumping the gun.
Yeah, it's not yet that story. But in any event, I do want to mention that what Moshe was saying. I mean, there is a midrashic source that initially, and this may be what you're referring to, Moshe, that initially, when David went to the Plishtim, he was offering his services to the king to Achish, as if he'll help him, you know, fight his wars. And I'm a single Jew. No one's going to recognize me. They're not going to bother with, you know, they're not going to be worried about me because I'm just an individual, and they won't know who I really am. And when they saw that he was deranged, then they realized that this guy is not who we're looking for. You know, maybe we would be interested in having a Jew who knows the insides of the Jewish camps, and we could, you know, maybe could help us, but not this guy. And I just want to get rid of him because he's reminding me, you know, I have enough to deal with. I don't need another person. So in that sense, it's sort of like the opposite of situation where once he found out that he's off, he really doesn't want him anywhere nearby. Now, yes, let's see. We have 1 second. Ezra has a question. Ezra.
Ben was before me, so let him ask the question.
Okay. Ben?
All right, I didn't want to ask a question. I wanted to say, I think Hashem put that idea in David's head because Hashem knew that the king's family is mental. So he probably put it in his head to play crazy. And the king thought, what if it was really David, he wouldn't dare come to me. So he probably is not David, he's a nut.
Okay. Very good. Yes, Ezra.
So here's my question. If you take a look at the last sentence in Parak 21, it says, if I'm reading it correctly, and I'm looking at Sefaria, it says, Hasal Meshugaim Ani. Okay. So he says, so the question that I have is, if it means, am I lacking fools? Shouldn't it be Haser Meshugaim Ani?
Yeah, that's what it says.
By me, there's a patah under the samech. It's not a tzere.
Uh-huh.
What pasuk is it?
Yeah, we're not up to there yet.
16.
16. We're not up to there yet, but
No, you were
did I say
discussing it.
16? Do I lack Matt? Oh, did I finish 16? I was discussing it. Yeah. I wanted to read it inside. Okay. So in any event, you want to know why it doesn't say chaser and it says chasar. What do you think chasar means?
Chasar is in the past. Is in the
Yes.
past form. So if it's in the past form, and it was talking about have I been lacking? Then it should have been hasarti. The first person past form. This, if anything, might be the third person past form. So it's either a mistake in Safaria.
No.
Or-
Chasar. It does say chasar. You're right.
So then my question is, how can you make a drush on the present the present verb tense?
Is lacking to me.
Just 1 second. Let me mute everyone and then unmute yourself, Ezra, please. Okay.
So the question I'm asking is, why hasad? What's, is it an error, or what exactly is it trying to tell us?
Mm-hmm. So I have to be honest with you. I do not know Hebrew grammar as well as you do, Ezra. So to me,
Chasam Meshugayim is a correct form of saying it. Is
Why?
it a time short of nuts, is what it means.
To me, chasar and chaser are both basically the same. And
So you're
Chasar
saying
is in the past. I'm not short of nuts.
Excuse
It
me.
wasn't short.
Chasarli, has it been lacking to me?
Chasar. No, chaserli.
I think Ben will back me up. Chasarli is, has it been lacking to me, Meshugayim? No,
and what would chaser? What would the difference?
that's past tense.
And what would the difference if it says chaser?
Chaser is today. Chasar is
Chasar is
yesterday.
present.
But what would you say? Am I missing, or did I miss?
If he had them yesterday, he has them today too. He didn't get rid of them.
To me, it's
Right.
I don't know, very similar, and I don't know if
It doesn't
okay,
matter.
I think I might know what it is. This is
maybe there's another option in grammar that it fits within.
there is, and that is that it's like what's the formula? The word of, which connects the two words. Oh gosh, I forget my Hebrew grammar, so I really don't.
In any event, the point I think is it has to mean like you would like it to mean, which is, do I lack Meshugayim, madmen, not did I lack madmen? So I think your question is a good question, because it makes sense to more say, do I lack, because not did I lack in the past, madmen.
Yeah,
But
no, I think it means
it's like a past perfect going into the present.
No. I think it's a lack of crazy people. Have I?
right.
Had.
Okay. But I would like to believe it's present. I would like to believe it's present, but again, I can't argue with our grammar
I
experts.
think
we'll
what
have
it
to,
says, if
you'll
I
have to do some research.
was I lacking nuts that you brought me some more?
No, but if that
That's
were the
what it
case,
means.
there would be Hasarti.
לא חסרתי, לא, חסר. It's okay.
Interesting. Okay. Anyway, to me, it just seems like do I lack Mishugayim? But if you want to read it like Ben says, it sounds like a good explanation. Thank you, Ben. Yes, and Ezra, if you can remember what term you want to use, please share it. But yeah, again, dicta Hebrew grammar is
for example, Avnei Shoham,
yeah.
Avanim Shel Shoham.
Okay.
That's
So
smichut. That's the possessive.
that's the connection between the two words. This is
Anyway.
this is saying lack of crazy people have I,
Right.
that you have brought these
Yeah.
to my, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the reason
doesn't
why
mean
they listed as a question mark at the very end of the sentence.
Right. Gotcha. So in other words, it doesn't have to mean past. Okay. Well,
No,
thank you.
it's
And
just
yeah. Okay.
I just had to
Rabbi-
figure out what it
Rabbi
was,
Smith?
that's all.
David.
Yeah, just on verse 14, where David is acting crazy, and you mentioned that now he understood the purpose of insanity in the world. So the Me'am Lo'ez adds just one sentence. Had there been no insanity, who would have understood what David was doing now?
Mhm.
Right. Wow.
Rabbi Smith?
That's an interesting point.
Rabbi Smith? I think also, particularly since he had the wife and the children, and he's the king, if God forbid he had let his servants kill David or had ordered the death of David, somebody would have had Khalila taken it into their minds to kill one of his kids or even his whole family.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced about that. I think killing an enemy is different than killing your family,
But if they want to get rid of Meshugaim by killing him, I mean, he had a note of compassion regarding that, I think.
Necessarily getting rid of Meshugaim by killing them. It was killing someone who's an enemy who's also Meshugana. But in any event, Hashem miraculously saved his life. So let's just finish off the last two verses here. And that is that Achish said to his servants, behold, you see the man is mad. Why do you bring him to me? Do I lack madmen that you have brought this one to carry on madly before me? Should this person enter my house? And now comes chapter 22. And chapter 22 is David is now going to move somewhere else. So David went from there and he escaped to the cave of Adullam. Now his brothers and all his father's house heard about this and went down to him there. So what's happening here is a very complicated situation, because on the one hand, the easiest way to escape is if you're quiet, no one sees you, you're a one-man show, you can hide. But the problem is he's also got his family who are nervous for their life, and they think the king is going to maybe kill them. And so they all decide, let's join David. But now this is creating a much bigger problem, because now David has a lot of people not only to worry about their safety, he's also got to provide food for them. And place this where they stay and where all these people are going to stay. But he's got his family. They gathered to him, every man in distress and every man with a creditor, every man embittered of spirit, and he became their leader. With him were about 400 men. So you gotta, he started out as like running away as like a single individual, and here he's now got 400 people. Anyone who was upset they all want to join David. And he's got a whole army. But you also have to take into consideration the flip side of the coin, and that is, what is Shaul thinking? What are the Jewish people thinking now? Now they see that David does have somewhat of an army. They don't see it as he's got the broken people that he's becoming their therapist. They see it as he's got a whole army of people, and they're looking at him as as he is starting a war against the king. So it's really creating a huge problem, not only in the eyes of Shaul HaMelech, in the eyes of King Saul, but it's also creating a big problem in the eyes of the Jewish people. And this may be the reason why when Shaul dies, it's not like they all join David and say, David, you are our king. They don't do that. It takes 7 years until he ends up becoming king over the entire Jewish people. And the reason possibly is because they look at David as if he is somewhat rebellious against the king. They see him as a man with an army. And that's possibly a thought that's going through the mind of the people at the time, possibly. Just throwing this thought out there. It's not my own thought. I've heard such a thought mentioned in classes, and it's possibly, I don't know if there's a source in the commentaries for this, but if you look at the story, this may be a common understanding, and maybe that's why the Jewish people are not running to take David as their king once Shaul dies. Again, we've got a few more chapters before that happens, but the idea sort of is this is the idea that we possibly are seeing right here in front of our eyes. Yes, Moshe.
So you're saying it's like Merit Ein. In other words, he's bringing now an army back, and it looks now like he did try to rebel against Shaul, in other words.
Yeah, but I'm not saying this is a sin or wrong or right. I'm just saying how people might be thinking, and this might be a reason why people are thinking, this is maybe an explanation of what went on in those days. I'm just sharing a thought that possibly is again, I'm not explaining and giving any excuse for anything that people did. I'm only sharing a possible thought. And again, it's not my own, but it's not from the commentaries. It's more of, a thought that people, that people who study this and teach it, sometimes it seems to come up in their teachings, as possibly this is what's going through the mind of the people.
Could I ask you, was this a form of conscription that he brought he had 400 people, or was this because these people were also considered Majnun and they joined with him because they saw that he was crazy, so they figured they're going to join with him and discontent, basically, that's what I'm trying to see here, because
they ran to him as he's a good person to hang out with. They saw he has free time now. Before he was running, he was a busy, he's busy working for the king. Now he's got a lot of free time on his hand. People find this a great opportunity, especially people who are suffering. David was a great person, and
they're looking for his protection.
Protection.
Of their lenders.
Right. Well, they're looking not necessarily his protection, but escape. They're looking to escape from their tsaros, from their challenges, from their creditors, embittered in spirit. So you don't only have people who are creditors. We've got other people who have other issues, but they're taking advantage of the situation. You know what it's like when the hurricanes hit over here. You find people end up going to the shelters. They were homeless in the first place, but they run to the shelters claiming yeah, my house, was destroyed in the hurricane, and I need to come to a shelter. And really, in truth, they never had a house. They were living in the streets in the first place. But now they have an opportunity to run. We've got a new excuse in town to come and get free food and a free place to stay with air conditioning. In these shelters. So all of a sudden they're coming there and they make up some story. Yeah, I used to live in that city, that street that got really hit with the tornado hit it or the hurricane hit it, and they come running to the shelter and make up a story, and they let them in over there. So here also, all these people, they're just coming running to the new shelter in town. And David seems to have the shelter. He's running the shelter, so to speak, and they're all joining, and they've got free therapy there, and maybe some good farbrengens. And David played music maybe for them as well, so might have a kumsitz. And they're having, they're dealing with their challenges together, and they're not alone. And so anyway, that's what it seems like here. I guess we'll have to stop here.